All right, bet. All right, so let's jump right into it. First of all, what's up with you, Andy?
What's going on?
You know, the only thing that I told you that I want to talk about today is I was like, we'll let it go where it's going. But these police shootings, for everybody that's going to watch later on, thanks for watching the replay. Darrell, Bennett here, come back swinging. This is my man here, Andy March.
What's going on, everybody?
The fresh cut. Look like when you get the cut.
Sometime this week. I did it myself.
I said, do it.
Yeah, before phase one of the reopening of everything.
Yeah, but phase one in the barbershops anyway, right?
Yeah, but I think we're at barbershops right now in California in the next week.
All right. If y'all stay on the
Or
downward
maybe even
trajectory.
today. I think tomorrow beach is open again. So I don't know, phase one to phase three happened like that.
Like that, especially when you care about money more than you do lives. But look, let's get right into it. So, all right, let me ask you something. Have you been hearing about all this stuff going on with Ahmaud Arbery?
I have been hearing, not as much as most, I'm sure, but definitely been keeping up with the travesty that went on in Georgia.
All right, what's your take on it? Because, I mean, look, I first heard, all these memes going around. They killed somebody who was jogging. White man killed a man jogging. I saw the memes, the comparisons to lynching, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's videos that's coming out that there may have been more to the situation. Have you seen the videos of, I don't know, him in and out of, looks like in an abandoned home, or you saw?
No, I have not seen that.
All right, what do you know about it? Let's just start there, because I really don't know what to think about this whole situation. So what's up?
Right. So I heard about it when I saw the video of this unfortunate shooting, from the perspective of a car that was trailing him while you see him running, and then all of a sudden you see him tussling with somebody like around a bend.
Interesting.
And then that's when he got shot.
Okay.
So that was my exposure to him. I heard that the father and son claimed that he was a suspect in some previous occurrences in their neighborhood, which is why they were trying to make a citizen's arrest. But I haven't heard too much in terms of the video of what was going on in a bigger picture.
In the bigger picture. So what's funny is I didn't even see the video of the shooting. I feel like I'm so tired of seeing young Black and Hispanic kids getting gunned down. It's like, I just don't want, I mean, I know he's not a kid, but you get what I mean. These young, he's getting killed. And so when I saw the meme, I knew it was more than this I wanted to engage with,
Right.
But I did see the videos. That's why I'm asking you. So you saw one video, I saw the other. Right. The video I saw was him walking in and out of a house that, I don't know what was going on with the house, but it wasn't like an abandoned house. It was in some phase of construction. And I don't know. They tried to say he was scoping out the place. I don't know. I just saw this video, but this is supposedly, I think, to add credence to why he did what he did.
Right.
But I'm getting George Zimmerman vibes from this whole thing. This whole neighborhood watch. Because this is my question, right? If he really was, let's say for a second he was a suspect. I don't know about the two people that killed him, I don't know. Are they police officers?
No, not from my understanding. I understood the father was previously employed by the district attorney or the county as a district attorney's investigator or something like that.
Got it.
But other than that, I don't know if they have any law enforcement.
Certainly they weren't acting as law enforcement agents, right? I mean, because that was my first question.
Right. So you touch on a point that is historical, right? Which is why this is not easy, and why a lot of times when we have the shooting of a young Black or Latino man, it's not so simple, particularly in our community's reaction, because this has historical context. And there's always been a sense of policing over Black and brown bodies in America. And that has permeated through the society where average citizens feel the onus to enforce the law on another citizen, right? And that's something that is embedded in the fiber of how the laws of freedom in America were executed during a large period of its history, right? So the freedom of protecting oneself, of defending your country, defending your property, becomes conflated with a racial history that enforces these laws upon people without their volition, without their consent, and without wrongdoing, purely with suspicion. That doesn't live up to the higher.
It deputizes people, right? That's what you're basically saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because my thinking is, I've seen people burglarize places before. I don't want to just assume about your life. You've probably seen some crimes happen in progress at some point in your life, right? At what point do you come to the place where you say, I can kill this person? That's the part I'm not understanding, that part.
Well, and that's why I started from historical context, because for a long period of time, that behavior was sanctioned, encouraged, started by the social order that we have here in America. That's still the presiding and predominant way of thinking, and that converse juxtaposes the way that a lot of Black and brown men and women walk in their own neighborhoods, right? With a certain level of defeatism, with a certain glass ceiling, and with a certain scorn and or pessimistic outlook on the possibilities, because there's constantly a glass ceiling. There's constantly a Black man in the media getting shot. There's constantly a Black woman getting shot. There's constantly a child being accosted. There's constantly somebody not being able to barbecue, have a picnic, walk into the store. Even this COVID-19 situation, there was a story where a lot of Black men were worried about having to wear masks. And lo and behold, in the news, you find situations where Black men have been accosted from entering stores with their masks. Right? So you're not able to protect yourself or your country or the people around you just because of the color of your skin. So it doesn't deputize everybody, right? Which is why you and I don't feel this onus to stop a crime in progress, whether as citizens. Right. And not only that, but have it planned out, because it's not just off a whim.
That's a whole other, exactly. Now I want to take it somewhere else. And Slayton's on here. Slayton's razzing a little bit. What's up, Slayton? I told him in about a month I want us all to jump back on here, kind of follow what we talked about last time. But let me ask you something. Did you see the video of the shooting of this kid named Nate Reed?
I did not see that. And,
okay.
Kind of like what you said earlier, I just couldn't at that point,
Did you hear about it? Because I was just about to share my screen. It's a 2-minute video. I want to get your thoughts on it.
All right, let's go.
I want to get your thoughts on this, because it's a short video, but this was the one that bothered me.
Is this the one in Georgia? Not Georgia. 22-year-old, right?
I think he was 22. Now I hate to say, I had to find this on World Star. Are you
No, we have to understand that in times like this, the same way countries, governments, peoples rally and use their resources to provide information, we have to do the same.
Absolutely.
So World Star is a top tier information source for many people. We just
Can
have
you
to
see
make
this?
sure it's good information. Yep, I got it.
Can you see it, Andy?
Yep, I can see it.
It's like 2 minutes.
Well, can you hear
All
me,
right.
Darrell?
And that's pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't hear it.
You couldn't hear it?
No, I couldn't hear it. I saw it. I just could see it.
That was the whole thing, right? So let me shut this off. All right.
In 2 minutes, he died.
In 2 minutes, he died. Man, I wish you could have heard it. Because the point was, this was the thing that bothered me about the whole situation, right? They shot this boy 15 times. Now, they're trying to come out and say, like, oh, you know, he shot them first. You need to watch this video in your own time, because I don't see where in this video he had time to shoot at them. They shot him 15 times. Isn't that crazy? So this is happening right against this whole thing that's happening with Martin. And this is the sad thing about it, right? So later they come out, and it comes out, because this was on live, and one of the guys one of the officers, whether he shot him or not, I don't know. I mean, one of the officers that said this, we don't know whether he made a shot at the kid or not, but he made a joke about it being a closed casket. This is a black man, though. So the officers, like the chief of police, made a point during the press conference to say it was a black officer who killed a black man, right? You know, because you like don't riot, don't turn up too much, because this was one of y'all doing it to one of y'all pretty much. So it makes me wonder how much of this is less about race and more about power, or is it about race and it's become so institutionally biased that even as a black officer, you can look over at a 22-year-old boy who's dying and make a joke, and he looks just like you. Like, how do we get to that place?
Well, you know, my thing is the historical point of view from it, because quite honestly, all of that is right. It's just such a difficult and threaded topic. You know, they always say, you know, the thin blue line or the blue wall or things like that, because when you become a cop, you become a cop. You know, it's less about race than about enforcement of the institution of law, of that. And then when you're on the streets with the systems of policing, for example, broken windows, that method of policing, you're engaged in our communities at a higher rate than you're engaged in other communities. You're policing through these neighborhoods. So everybody has something wrong in their community, but the way it's set up, ours ends up being highlighted. So what ends up happening is you have a whole bunch of officers who end up being jaded because they see just a pinpoint of the half of 1% of the worst of us. And then now they go on and treat everybody that way.
Even being black. And that's
being
what,
black, because now you have to think about it. I know black officers, and they're
mm-hmm.
good people, and they're not so good people. They're just like everybody else, right? But you have to think about the racial history of policing, right? And then also, we could talk about it from the 1900s in Tammany Hall in New York City, where there was a predominantly takeover from the Irish, and the riots in New York City in 1904, and how that transpired. Or you could go back to original policing, which is when Southern landowners hired bounty hunters, if you will, to catch slaves. That was the first policing. And then that bounty hunter thing that gets idealized in the West was an extension of that, coming out of an earlier period in the South, where these were people who were catching runaway slaves, and people that were owed debts before America became a non-debtor society, and which is, I don't know where we're going, but people get locked up now for child support, right? So, okay, so there's a history
mm-hmm.
in this enforcement and how it looks that allows a black man to shoot another black man and use the same charged language, right, that another person would use, right, that we would instantly relegate as racial bias. Racial bias is inherent in our form of capitalism, in the way we built the fabric of America, because African Americans and Africans and Native Americans and Latinx from the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and all of these in this Western Hemisphere, African diaspora people, were interchanged. Families were in the islands and sold off to America. So there's a broader community that was villainized and used as the lowest class in order to create wealth on, free labor, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what capitalism capitalized on. That's how it was able to go on. So policing, as we saw, just to wrap it up, in Occupy Wall Street, for example, this became an issue mm-hmm. when there was a peaceful protest, and then the NYPD ended up barricading Chase Bank, right? So the question was, why Chase Bank was able to receive this level of security and protection, being a citizen, right, but technically, but a corporation, mm-hmm. right, but not a human live citizen, a landowner though. But the people who were protesting and were feeling oppressed were not able to receive this protection.
And Occupy Wall Street, if I remember correctly, that wasn't racially driven at all, because those were mostly young white kids, weren't they? Or
well, yes, our brother Jason Woody was on those front lines as well. Another Morehouse man at the beginning of onset of that.
Gotcha.
So, absolutely. But it just goes into enforcement and the history of policing in America and the thought process that, mm-hmm. yes, it's racial, but it's institutionalized racism.
And what's the difference?
Well, it's the difference that black man can view young black men as assailants before he views them as his potential brothers or young men that he needs to outreach, right? It's the fact that he has to deal with other people in his locker room, dealing with people in his own community every day, and they look at him or her as in, you're the other. So that creates a level of discord in that person, where they might express that in that kind of a situation. They hear the jokes in the locker room.
Yeah.
And they have to be the cop who defends that person.
Mm. That's deep. I mean, and I guess that comes to this tightrope that so many of us always feel like we're on, as particularly as people of color in this country, like when you're almost forced to walk this tightrope between what's hurting your people maybe than what may be benefiting you personally. So you move
Right.
up in the ladder personally as this great, police officer, but you see that it's at the cost of destroying the communities that you come from and that you profess, because many of them want to see this. I'm from the, yeah, but where are you now?
Right.
And
Right.
whose side
And I
you
mean,
on now?
you hit the nail right on the head. It's a tightrope code switching to another degree, because there has been, and increasingly in the last couple of years, more of a contentious relationship between the police departments and the African American community. And you know that from growing up. It's not necessarily cool to be a cop, right? But there's people, we come from order. From the beginning of time, we come from order. So those cops are not outside the scope of what Black people are here to do. What they are forced to do is live within their oppressive society and still have peace in themselves to bring order to their greater society, right? Which is hard because I commend them for that. But we also understand that this system and this department, rooted in its history, has a very complicated history, and they're good people who try to police, but it's difficult. It's difficult. As one of the gurus said, Guru Krishnamurti passed away in the late 90s. He says, you can't be a healed body in a sick society, right? Meaning like, you can't feel like you're good and everything around you's in shambles, because then you're not really in touch. You're not really in reality, right? And which is what we are going through as a community as a whole. And we can, pinpoint that into specifics, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's the oppression of the White House, whether it's, police brutality in the history of it, right? It's not just this hit, right? We can go down a list.
A litany of things that is...
Right, a list.
So how do we stop it though, Andy? I mean, so you got the Black Lives Matter movement, and let me ask you that quick. What do you think about the whole Black Lives Matter movement?
No, I think it's absolutely relevant and necessary. It's, a lot of times we want one thing to be the be all and end all. We need that to be an example to continue to build on what we need to build, which is infrastructure. When your back is bent over, you can't stand up. And if you can't stand up, how can you sit at the table? And all these other communities have a straight back, if you will, whether it's economic empowerment, unity. There's a whole litany of things that we could be doing. And it's not to be victim blaming, and it's not to be try to sound like this whole pick yourself up by the bootstraps. No, it's not that. We know that there is oppression and active engagement to hold down. Absolutely. But we're stronger than that. That's the point. Let it be arrogance, let it be hubris, let it be the divine touch of the melanin in our body to inspire us to just be who we are, which is greater than anything that could hold us down.
All right, so what do you say? Let me ask you this. So what do you say to people who are like...
See, now you're going to get me riled up now, Darrell.
Because now I'm about to get you, because you know where I'm about to go, right? All right, so, but y'all shooting yourselves, right? You shooting yourselves, you killing yourselves, you out here with this music. And all right, this isn't just me playing devil's advocate as far as the music. The music is out of control. You know it, Andy. I mean, can you turn on a music video now with Black people in it, and it's hip hop, and you don't hear nigga this, and suck my that, and all this other stuff. I'm trying to keep it somewhat G-rated because I know my pastor might be listening to it later, and my mother might be listening to it. But all of these shooting people and killing people and all this. And I understand, right? Because before you go, I understand how this whole thing is. People wanted to talk about what's really happening in the community. I get that. But now you've got the 6ix9ines of the world, right? Where you're talking about things that really you aren't a part of. And there's a lot of people like that. You're rapping this life that you want to glorify, but you ain't living that, and you never have, and you should be glad you have it. So what do you say to those people that's like, you kind of doing it to yourself? So don't get mad when the officer rolls up and does what he does.
No, I'm getting mad because you taught me to do this to myself, right? And there's a distinct difference. I don't do this to myself because I want to. I do it to myself because I think it's what I do, right? And it's because I don't know what I do, right? When I learn what I do.
Who taught it? Who taught it?
Well, this is the way you've been treated for centuries, right? There is an absolute Stockholm syndrome type of vibe going on, where you've been doing this for so long, you've held up, you've been strong, right? Civil rights movement was successful because we owned our own stuff, right? And after integration, right, everybody got a job at the white company and disbanded their own company, right? Their children didn't want to move into the family business. They wanted to go to the big city, work for the big time thing that was on TV, that was society. And that's caught up to us now in rap. This was our organic expression of what was going on, poetry in motion. It's one of the biggest genres in 25 years that goes from literally gangster rap to now you have like NBA, all these brands that didn't want to touch rap. Just everything is rap. Rap is considered top 40 now, whereas there were radio stations that never played rap. So there's a lot that goes with rap music, but I do agree with you to the extent that we can't make it what it was not intended to be, right? It is losing a lot of what it was intended to be. And now it's just kind of expressing a vanity that was never part of us. Abundance and vanity are two different things, right? We are naturally attracted to beauty. We are naturally attracted to abundance. So I'm not mad at the change. I'm not mad at the cars and wanting to be better, because we come from the best, right? So what we're seeing is that strength of that pedigree will seep through, right? But we also have to realize, like, at what point is it self-damaging? And when we have our young women not feeling beautiful and feeling oppressed, right? And as men, we have to do better. We have to call out Black men. Black women have held our community down for years, and we've been absent, whether that's for our own reason, for our own oppression, because we know what we have to deal with on a regular basis, right? And that is a difficult conversation to tell to a woman who has to deal with her own things in the oppression of men on women, right? On top of being a Black woman, right? So it's to the point now where we have to start coming back into the fold and policing ourselves. Like, I was so excited. I don't know if you saw the story of the Michigan senator, the Michigan representative, who had 6 Black and Latino men escort her into the Capitol, right? At armed guard. Because the week prior, you had several white supremacist groups infiltrate, right? At gunpoint, right? And this is the juxtaposition to bring us back to our conversation. At gunpoint, gunpoint with AR-15s, and they were not hunting. Yeah. They were not hunting.
No.
In the state capital of Michigan. Whereas you have a state legislator literally having fear, she said in an article that she never felt fear like that. And she was in her workplace doing the people's business. And I was so proud to see that those men stood up and escorted her into that state house in armed guard. Because, you know, at some point, right? At some point, that needs to happen.
Well, right. You talk about armed guards. You know, the Black Panthers are outside of that father and son's house that shot Ahmaud. There's videos of that circulating around the internet. And people called the police, and the police would not engage them. There's Black Panthers standing out, guns like this long. I don't want to say I don't think. I haven't heard of them menacing anyone except by their very presence being black and armed. You know.
Right, because, you know, the Second Amendment is for all citizens, right?
Well,
right? So, but at the same point, I say that we have to remember who we are and not lose ourselves in their game. But at the same time, our women need to feel secure to be able to go to work, and our young men don't need to be shot on a job.
I want to go back to something you said. So we've been taught, and this is, I know you well enough to know you're not talking victimology here, but we're pointing out historical references and things that have happened to show why perhaps some of the things are where they are. So you're saying the reason why we calling women bitches and hoes, because that's what we're doing in a lot of the songs, right? Mm. And that's the nicer term, because the women are calling themselves that in many cases. And the reason why we're glorifying, I'm not talking about the cars and the chains. That's, you know, like you said, that's a vanity thing. I'm talking about this overt, go kill somebody. Let me give you an example. Do you know the guy, young YMW something Melly, the one down in Florida, who came out with the song Murder on My Mind, and now he's in prison for murder on his mind? You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So this sort of thing, where you, in his case, I know it's still ongoing, but you put out this stuff. Why? How do we break the cycle? I mean, how do we get to a point where it's like, because it seems to be getting worse, not better. Like, I remember when we were growing up, all right, like, certain words you couldn't even say, like on the, I guess you still can't say on the radio, but music videos kind of had it. And it was out to say, you know, oh, they got cars and all this and chains. Those were like the aberrant ones. Now, the glorification of violence, to me, seems to be on a whole nother level. And they're dying earlier. I mean, how many can you name?
Right. It's such a, like I keep on saying, it's so complicated, right? Because it's so deep. There's no easy answer. But this is what I think. The men have to step up. We can go through all the different scenarios and all the different levels that allows the young men to make this music, that allows the older men to produce it, that allows people to make it happen, whatever. We can go through that till the cows come home. At the end of the day, the men and the leaders in the community, the women, the leaders in all the different communities need to step up. And then not step up with the shame, with the negative reinforcement that was taught to us in the seasoning process. We need to do it in wisdom, knowledge, and love, which is what was taught to us in our blood.
Oh no, Andy, like, we got to get practical with this one. How? Okay,
how? I mean, what does love mean? Agape love in the community? Does it mean starting a basketball program? Does it mean stopping and telling these children about your life? And does it mean not accepting a child to speak to you a certain way? Does it mean setting a standard differently? Does it, this what I'm talking about, it's for everybody. We could all practice this if we look to the better part of ourselves. And we all got trash. We all have trash. Right? So I'm not a perfect person, so I'm not trying to speak, oh, la la, in the sky, pie in the sky, heaven. No, what I'm saying, what can we do practically is stop BSing ourselves, right? Like, we're not doing the best thing, all of us. And I see older gentlemen, right, talk about a young man, yo, take off your hat. Take off your hat there, young boy. Did you know that child never ever had a hug in his life, and all he's ever heard from men in your age generation is take off the hat
and pull up your pants? You're so right.
And pull up your pants, and then we're talking about the rap music. Like, that's the last of our issue. That is the last of our issue. We got to get our house in order, not the thing that's on the radio. Turn off the radio and talk to the kid.
That's true.
Give him a job. Start a business so that you have something to offer. and
That's
they're
true.
not a job that you're competing with him to hold on to, and there's no opportunity for intergenerational exchange. How many young people talk to an older person? That can have something to do with the way our social order is set up, where an older person is 10 years older than you now, 3, 4, 5 generations on top of each other in the same age bracket. But there becomes a loss of information, of experience.
That's so true. I agree with you there. And so everybody's starting from the bottom, and because the fatherlessness is such an issue in so many of our communities, for whatever reason. I mean, that we can get on the whole thing on that one.
There's great fathers who are not there because they're working, but they're not there.
But
right?
And the fact remains, I think when you don't have that active father in your life, you're less willing to seek mentorship. You're less willing to submit to the leadership of another man. And that's going to lead to a lot of it. I mean, look, I'll tell you, it took me being probably maybe about 3 years ago to really realize how much I wish I had. My father's still alive. And we're trying to work on our relationship, that I realized that that's a missing piece for me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's full of some dark roads in my life for me to realize, not in any way assigning blame to him, but to realize, like, wow, like, I long for that sense of having a father and being, like, you know what I mean, guided. And I just feel like in so many ways, sometimes that's and I think you're right too when you say about the music. So the music, it almost makes me think of that scripture, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So the music is the you were putting the cart before the horse. You're focused on the output, but like you're talking about what's actually happening on the inside. It's like, it seems like there's so many issues that how do we fix at once? And it's not just the Black community. This is happening.
Right. This is for 7 billion of us, Darrell. Right? Because as above, so below, right? And being that we are the ones who were given dominion, so to speak, to have guardianship over the land, not people. It's not about power. That's the point, right? And that's what we've exhibited through our sacrifice of generations. We have not revolted. You know, African Americans are the only group of people whose motherland has never attacked America. Okay? Okay?
Okay. Wait a minute.
Let's make that very clear.
Say that again. Because I got a lot of
African Americans are the only group of people in America whose motherland has not attacked or been at war or at war with America. Officially. Okay? So we have been slaughtered through ages without slaughtering mass, right? Which is partly where we talk about policing is the ideology. Why are police so heavily in our community? Because what are you expected to do? How do you live this way? You were going to revolt eventually, right? Well, no, we don't. Because we're not like that. We endure, we survive, we influence culture. We promote culture, we make food, we make music, right? So at the same time, our music is permeating in a negative time, but we vibe with the earth, and we are not in the best of times. So these young people who are brilliant and are able to capture your mind in the most ignorant of contexts is because you live in ignorance right now.
You live in ignorance. You know, and you're talking about something which is really interesting, which is you're hitting on this fact of someone's presence being a threat. I mean, because that's what you're getting to when you mow past it quickly, but you talk about the over-policing being this anticipation that there's going to be an uprising. Because if I keep slapping you around, at some point, you're going to jab back, right? I need to be prepared for when that happens. But like you said, that has not happened. It has, but it hasn't, right?
Right. I mean, come on. There's, somebody, Nate was like, yo, let's go in. And then somebody's like, yo, Nate, come on, man. They're not the worst people, Nate. They're not, they're just misguided, Nate. I mean, you know what? Let's not do it like that way. We can get to them. We can show them.
Nathaniel Turner, right?
Yeah, Nate Turner.
He
turned up.
Yeah.
All right, a brother who turned up. Much love. But you understand where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah.
There was somebody in that group, because we have it every time, and we might ostracize them, but they are the best part of us, who say, nah, we ain't about that life. We're gonna do it a little bit differently. But you know, how do you get a chicken to understand something you don't speak chicken? There's a miscommunication with the way we try to have people treat us the way we treat them. That is not reciprocated. So then we end up in the conundrum of having to act like them so that they understand how we speak the same language and understand their language, and then try to now take that and elevate, right? Which is two jumps. First, you got to take yourself all the way down and stay and be yourself, right? Which is what we're struggling with now. We're trying to get up to their level by bringing ourselves and ourselves down while trying to be who we are, and then trying to take them back up and say, hey, I was always somebody else, but I had to be this so that you can accept me. You know.
What do you feel about, was integration the right move?
I mean, that's a 50-50 shot. If it's a right move, if we can integrate with the understanding first before you give up all of your jewels. We integrated by giving up all our assets. That's not integration, that's subjugation, right? So, integration means like, no, integration would have been like, no, keep all your stuff. We'll just do business with you. We won't lock you out of the marketplace, but no, keep your company. You don't have to come work for me. You don't have to give up your assets. No, don't do that. Right, but we don't get that kind of a response. Oh, of course, right. Yeah. Right, for the majority, for somebody who's integrating, welcoming, in a civilized, right? So like this other thing, we call ourselves a civilization. We haven't been civil since the Garden of Eden. Come on, right? Yeah. So that's the farce that we are into right now, all 7 billion of us, right? Because we can make a challenge right now to all 7 billion people, right? Because we know we can get to all 7 billion people. Coronavirus has taught us that we can touch 7 billion people.
That's so true.
And every single person has a choice, right? A choice to say, I want to support life, or I want to support death, right? The journey for life and death could be seemingly intertwining. It could happen one to the other. But the mindset of supporting life is one that is bringing forth and manifesting and building, right? What's the last thing we did as a civilization? We look back in history in awe, and we haven't done anything. I was looking at Peter Thiel, the guy you were talking about, and he was talking about we haven't done anything since the internet.
Yeah.
And he's right. I want to continue to find out because, going into race, we talk about inventors and what is. Yeah. We've been doing that since, the Nina, the Santa Maria, and the other boat that they came on. All right? The Mayflower.
No, I don't think those ships came at different times, but I'm with
you. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. That's my point. What you mean. Yeah, that's my point. I know them. I love history. I know their names.
I know you know that. So that's interesting, kind of bringing that up about, this sense of newness or not newness. I mean, and you make a good point about integration versus subjugation, and it's always interesting to me. I mean, not to take it somewhere completely different, but I always think it's interesting when people may express, particularly people of color, who might express some sort of grievance they have with this nation. They say, well, go back to your country. Yeah, after we built this one for 400 years. You know what I mean? It's like you build a house.
Let me drop another jewel on you right there. What have we been here before those 400 years? What have I been here for 1,000 years? That's right. The oldest let's get information out there. The oldest recognized tribe in America is the Washita Indians in Louisiana, and they look like you and me.
Yeah, okay. See, now you're going somewhere different, though, because you start going there, and that comes squarely against this narrative that all of us were slaves, that all of us came over here on slave ships. And it almost might suggest on some level ownership over this land in a way that nobody's really wanting to talk about.
Well, of course.
Because we've been here, right?
Well, now that you mention that word, that's to me the worst word in the whole entire world is ownership. That has destroyed our world, right? That's why we can't look at each other as brothers and sisters, but as tenants and stewards. We're not stewards of the land, is what I'm saying. We don't use the word stewards, right? We use owners, which is a completely different connotation and metaphysically negative, right? Because
that's
right.
True.
So historically, when the Native Americans sold the Dutch New Amsterdam, which was later called Manhattan, they laughed at the dollar that they got because they were like, "How can you buy land?" It was a concept that was just mind-boggling to them. They thought they got over on the Dutch, and the Dutch were like, "Are you kidding me? $1 for this all day? I'm in there like swimwear." You know what I mean? So that concept of ownership is dangerous.
That's deep that you would liken it to
dangerous.
That. You're absolutely right. This concept of stewardship versus ownership, but I mean,
you got to keep me on track. You got to keep me on track. So go back, and I know Slayton will appreciate that too.
No, because I love this word totally, and I don't even want to, because that's going to open up a whole other can of worms. But let's go back to integration for a second, because let's tie this all together. So we're talking about Ahmaud, we're talking about Nate Reed, some of these more recent shootings, police shootings. But what we're finding, even though, let me just clear this up. Ahmaud was not killed by police, but it still seems to fall under that umbrella, because just like Zimmerman.
Well, right, what ends up happening is the police become linked to it by not making an arrest, by not policing the situation.
That's good.
Yeah. Right? So, like, you're a part of this.
So in
your mind, one of you guys.
Yeah, you feel.
Going through an internal investigation, right? And then, which is, let me blow another can of worms right there with the police. In America, for many people, they see the judge on the street, right? The way the narrative is set up, the way the way that the police report from the decision to make an arrest, right? Because we see here, there could be a decision to make an arrest. That's a concept that's foreign to many of us. We just get arrested. What do you mean you didn't have to arrest me? You mean you could have talked to me tomorrow? I could have gone home tonight? Like, we don't even understand that.
We don't let you get your affairs in order. In some cases, you even get sentenced and they say, we'll let you get your affairs in order. It's like, must be right. Because you're right. You're absolutely right. There are many hands which are playing a part in an orchestra that by the time you stand in front of a formal judge to plead or not, or trial or not, it's already been many hands. You've already touched so many systems, whether that's starting at birth with the health system and then the educational system that you've been stewed in. You're right. And to the fact that the police officer, they say that, I never forget this in law school, our professor of criminology said that, or criminal law, said that the police officer on his beat is the most powerful man in the world, period.
Absolutely.
We
invest somebody's hand, life in their hands.
It's so true.
And you can legally make a decision without indemnified. You are indemnified to make a decision about somebody's life or death.
That's very true. And
you're only required to have 60 credits.
That's in New York. We don't even want to touch it other places where you just, as long as you can just kind of, but so, all right, so tying this all up, so you got this concept of shootings or police shootings or people who have been over policing communities, and then kind of threading this line to integration, or how do we get here? Because we talked a little bit about rap music and whether the music itself is playing a part in this glorification of an epidemic that we are grieving about. So how do you grieve about something that maybe you played a part in, but you made this point of maybe you played a part in it, but you've been taught to play that role, right? But now kind of threading it all through when we talk about, integration versus subjugation and stewardship versus ownership, where do we go from here? And that what Dr. King was last book wrote, 1967, I believe. Where do we go from here? Where do we go to get to the place where we're more than just woke? Because everybody talks about being woke, and you're still doing the same stupid stuff, right? You're woke, and you're still shopping in the stores that none of the pictures look like you. You're woke because you don't watch the Oscars, but yet you still have Netflix. I have Netflix, don't get me wrong, but I don't call myself woke because that's a whole...
Right, but you see, that's another thing, right? We can't get caught up, right? Words, particularly the English language, a dead language, right? I'm sure in law school you appreciate the language of the law and how tricky it really could be, the words that we use. We get caught up in all of that, like forget about all that. Like the bottom line is that we have to get back to loving ourselves, truly, right? That sounds pie in the sky.
Yeah, how do we
to earth?
Yes.
Down to earth, right? We just do it. We just do it, right? We have always done it, and we have forgotten ourselves. We have gone through it, and we have not appreciated our growth as well. We are our past. There's tons of different, Black people are not a monolith, right? And a lot of Black people who are trying to push the envelope and break out of that feel subjugated by other Black people who are saying, no, you have to be like all the things that they said you are like, and that we've accepted that we are like. It's about breaking all of these definitions, right? Because when you're defined, you're confined, right? You're not allowed to be refined.
Say that again. I need to get a book called Andrews. When you are defined, you are confined, and now you can't be refined.
Exactly.
Hold on. I need to write that in my book.
And what it is really, Darrell, is because we're moving forward. You can go into Big Bang, because everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected, and we're moving towards unity, right? The question is unity going to be easy, or is it going to be hard? Are people going to not understand it? Are people going to just get with the program? And there's a lot of dissidents out there that will try to disrupt the harmony, right? I'm not talking New World Order, because there's a whole other thing when you say, oh, coming to unity. You mean one world order, that's what I'm talking about, is that we, all 7 billion of us, understand that we want to live. What does live mean? We want to be able to eat some food, not excessively, right? We want to be able to have a shelter, not opulently. We want to be able to use our talents.
Yeah, but those, all right, see, now you're opening something else, and we coming toward there. We got about 5-10 more minutes.
You said, no, you went too far.
No, because you're about to open something else, and we're going to have to talk about that later, because now you untook it from, okay, I'll start with the last point. We want to use our talents, which is a God-given, wonderful, purpose-driven thing, right. But we want to eat. But we don't want to eat. Look at Instagram. We want excess, right?
No, I'm saying everybody wants that, right? And everybody
wants what?
Everybody wants to live, they want to eat, they want to use their talents, all 7 billion people in the world, right?
Hold on, go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
Right, all 7 billion of us. But right now, what we're talking about in our community is we're not doing those things, right? And we're the ones who are supposed to set that example, right? So there's no question as to why everything else is out of sync, right? So if you want to be responsible, then accept responsibility.
But I think that's part of the problem. Okay, well, let's go through that whole list again. And I do agree that this is definitely bigger than the Black community. This is a people issue, and I think it's how we've been socialized. Let's start with the talents. Right. I don't know if most people want to use their talents. I think most people want to get paid for.
That's the same thing, right? Paid. What is paid? Paid is a resource that you use to do life through, right? What does paid mean? You use it to get your water, to pay your bills, right? To be able to live, right? That's the concept that's like the concept of ownership. If I'm not getting paid, I can't own anything.
But I think, right, sure, you're absolutely right, versus stewardship, but I think therein is the problem, right? In each bucket, it's almost like we put the cart before the horse. We have the
Exactly.
So it's like, how many people are really concerned about impact? Most people are concerned with numbers, right? How many numbers do I have, right?
That's why I got out of nonprofit. I used to do nonprofit. You know what I mean?
Because it was all
and I was always told, numbers this, get me numbers that, get me numbers here.
Because you get the numbers, you can get the money. And I get it, it's a big cycle. Then you feel like you get the money, you can make the impact. But it's like, we're more focused on, what are the numbers, right? And, how much money do I have rather than how much of a impact. Look, and I believe if your impact is high, we can get to the income. But the focus so much is income. And then the other thing is eating, right? Yeah, of course, at the basic level, everybody wants to eat, but we want to stunt and eat, right? And I don't think that's not just a Black thing, right? Look at what social media, right, kind of creates. It seems to create a world where it's not just about being happy for what sustains you, but I need to be able to show that to somebody else that my worth is more than them.
Right.
So I got to take a picture of my food, right? I can't just eat. I got to take a picture.
But you see how we're socialized to not want the real thing and do and live the right way to get the real thing, but in fact to create a virtual world that allows our emotions to get tied into having that, while you're being placated to be less than that. Then you're at your home to feel depressed about that, because you have to worry about money in order to live, which is what I'm saying. They all will tie in. We could spend hours. I'll break it down. But we got to get, if you want to, let's do an hour and get to the point. The point is we could do it. The point is that we have to do it. The point is that we have everything to do. We can quote Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, all of these intelligent people.
Throw X in there.
Malcolm X, Nat Turner, all of them. But the bottom line is that we can do it if we start to go back to understanding that we come from abundance, and that if we start to think better thoughts, right? Positive, right? And not just pie in the sky, but real, like, yo, I see need, I take care of need. Yo, I see distress, I relieve distress. I see pain, I alleviate pain. I see disjoy, I encourage. Basic things that now become habits, things that now empower and enlift. I support. We have to remove this idea that we're shifty. We can't get a Black business off the ground. Now you have to be a radical or part of Black Lives Matter or a part of, I Shop Black just to support a Black business. And then we talk about holding people accountable. I support your business, whereas my bounce back rate in my community, which is how much money is transferred within community for those who don't know, is 1, or 0, meaning that Black money does not go to another Black hand. It goes to other people whose bounce back rates are 17 to 1. 16 to 1, meaning it will touch 16 people in their community before it ever leaves.
But see, Andy, now you're touching on something totally different, which is the fact that we've become more proud. It used to be we were proud of what we produce. Now it's about being proud about what we consume. And this brings it full circle. I think that's part of the messaging of not just social media, but music in a large way, and particularly music that is targeted toward us. It's about what you have, what you can buy. So now you are a boss, not because you created a business, not even because your records did great numbers, because I might even go with you there, but you're a boss because I got a watch that's $50,000 on it, right?
Right. And then now it's because you've been a victim of a parasite behavior, right? Because you created the culture, that's the commodity. The distribution model is what they're capitalizing on, because they say, no, you can't have that. You can have the talent, you can provide the content, you can have the intellectual property that we'll take from you because we'll trademark that. But you're just consumer. No, we're not just consumers. We're the creators of this thing that we're consuming. We create what we consume, but we don't get the benefits of it, right? And we have to have a historical context back to the mercantile system, right? When the British used to, that's when Americans said, you know, enough's enough. I'm going to go revolt because I'm picking this cotton, and then I've got to ship it over to Britain, and then go buy then they're going to ship it back to me to make a sweater, then ship it back to Britain, and then get it on Amazon Prime from Britain at an expense. That's not happening. So we create the culture, right? Because Jordan, the stylists who created Jordans, okay, they look probably like you and me. Jordan, the name, is like you and me. But that product that's become a bastion of fashion and in our community.
Black fashion.
Right.
Nowhere else. Nowhere else.
Well, I mean, what fashion isn't? I mean, what trendsetter? You know, you want me to be controversial? I'll be controversial, right? Find me something that ain't.
You might be right there, touche. So yeah, you make a good point, and I never really thought of it that way. We are creating it. It's just that we're not.
We don't capitalize on it. Our community is not stunning the way we should be, because why are we abundant? Because we come from abundance. Why do we want to be stunted? Because we come up with original ideas, things that don't happen here.
You know, though, but you know, I do have to say that's what I think makes this younger generation that's coming up, I guess the Generation Z, I think makes them different. Even though a lot, they may be doing some crazy stuff, but I think they own it, just even in the music business, owning their masters, putting out their own stuff, being independent, saying, I don't need Sony, or if
they're demanding respect, and we don't like it, because that's not how we've been taught. We've been taught that we haven't been taught to have a straight back and demand respect.
That's right. You should just be happy to be there. You should be happy to be in the room, be happy that you're getting your face put on.
And that's why I don't want to bash the young people with the music and stuff like that.
I got you.
We've not afforded them the environment to allow their brilliance to truly shine yet.
That is true.
So our generation, the generation ahead of us, need to get our heads out of our butts and start breaking some walls down the way we were sent here to do. And I don't mean physical walls, but I mean mental barriers with our energy. What I mean is glass ceilings with our intellect. What I mean is the walls that books have held from us by reading all of them.
I got you. And that's a whole nother thing, because now you're talking about, I know I keep saying it's a whole nother thing, but it's true, because you keep
It's because everything's connected.
It is.
Right? You know me, I will tie the whole thing in.
Absolutely. You're talking about misinformation and disinformation, and the fact that just because you're educated doesn't mean you have wisdom. And just because you have information doesn't mean you're educated, because that's a whole other thing. You went to all these schools, you learned, and this is probably a good way to end. That's the one thing I appreciated about Morehouse, because I felt like I read a lot of books as a child. I felt like I learned a lot of things. Morehouse was the first time that I really learned some things that I never really thought. I mean, it was the first time I even heard that Hannibal was a man that looked like you and me, or that the people in the Roman Empire and emperors, like, you know, one of his name was Emperor Marcus. I forget his exact last name. He was African. Like, I always thought of everybody is the standard of greatness was always European, whether it was the best writers, you know, it was Shakespeare and Charles Dickens, and the best soldiers was Caesar. But I began to really see when I was there, like, whoa, wait a minute, there's a whole nother side of life that we were never taught, and even Asia. I mean, I didn't know that gunpowder came from Asia. I didn't know that they were dragon kingdoms there thousands of years ago. You know, they made it almost seem like everybody else was in darkness and Europe was the only one building. We're not even going to touch that right now.
I know, yeah. Well, we could go into the Dark Ages and the Moors being in charge of Europe, and they're getting their blue blood from black blood, right? Right? But Queen Charlotte, I know you appreciate the royals, so you know Queen Charlotte, the mother of the royal families of Europe, a black woman.
No, I didn't know that. Hold on. Drop something on me.
I just said it. Queen Charlotte was a black woman. The Habsburgs, all these blue blood lineages, they're all descending from, which is
Charlotte?
what the whole movie, The Last King of Scotland, Idi Amin, who was embattled with a lot of negative history, black African dictator, general, liberator, however you want to define him, made a claim for Scotland. Because the Dark Ages, right, really was when we were running Europe, right? When the Moors were building the beautiful cathedrals in Spain. And then what, all of a sudden there was the Renaissance, Enlightenment? Where'd you get it from? You were just coming out of the darkest part of your history and all of a sudden you get it now? When in our lives have we ever experienced that phenomenon, the magical?
That is so true.
So we don't even know how to look at history without the baggage of the doctrine of discovery, like we were discovering.
The veil. I'm gonna call it a veil, because it's a veil that has been placed there to keep people from knowing really not just who they are. I mean, the Bible talks about that the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelief. It's a literal veil. So when you are told that
you don't know me, you're lost because you don't know me.
Yeah, and when you're told you're great and that you have greatness in you, you really can't believe that, because it's nothing that you see externally to affirm or confirm that statement or that assertion. So it just sounds like a motivational speech.
Right, Right, but you're absolutely right. But I also want to make it a very important point. It's not also externally, it's more importantly internally, right? Because these external stimuli end up developing your inner thoughts, right? So yes, it's important for young Black kids to see somebody like a President Obama, but that still doesn't change the nature of the communities of color, right? What changes the nature of the communities of color is that those kids believe that they're great and worthy enough and brilliant enough and have examples in their life, have been guided in their life to flourish, right? So we can't get caught up with just the external markers and the external things, which is what we have done post-segregation. And to tie it up and kind of wrap it up, because I know you're trying to wrap it up, segregation, right? We've lost a lot of that value system in terms of information and what we are about. We've kind of sold ourselves out for the sense of capitalism, and now we're lost. We can't play that game. We build on the foundation of the earth, on values, on culture, on vibes. And we need to go back to building and creating music, art, culture, clothes, things that people actually use to live, right? And then we can, again, our greatest minds, we can solve cancer, AIDS, but those kids don't have books in public schools. So we don't understand how this is a global issue, right? That the kids who are here to solve cancer don't have a textbook. Yet there's the richest of us paying for somebody who can't figure it out, exorbitant amount of money for no reason. And the kid who is here to do it doesn't have food in their stomach.
That's deep. And that's I think we'll end on that point because obviously we have much more to talk about. Let's I don't know what you're doing let's do 2 weeks from now. I don't know what you're doing 2 weeks from now. Let's meet up Wednesday again. Let's keep going.
Whenever.
Let's do it because I think this is important. I think a lot of people,
they're gonna be mad about we're taking a week off now. People are the fans are gonna be mad we're taking a week off, but I could do 2 weeks.
That is true. So let's see, maybe next week. Yeah, you're right. They're gonna feel
Don't start that, won't be done.
They'll start that. And this is the thing, right? Like I think I have this big thing that I want to see more HBCUs. I just don't want to see through this. I know we're coming to a close, but I don't want to see, just on a personal note, this thing affect. We know it's affecting the educational system. I am concerned that it's going to hit HBCUs hard. And we need HBCUs. I mean,
yes, we do.
You and me, obviously, this whole conversation is a product of that, right? In a big way. And you talk about, because it struck me when you talked about kids being sent here. We talk about being sent to Earth with a heavenly mission, but they need earthly resources. They don't have the
nope. Right, which is why ownership is destructive. Let's bring, okay? Right, which is why we have to understand what abundance and scarcity is. These are not just economic terms, but spiritual terms that affect your vibration, that affect how you move, how you shake, how you speak, how you walk, how you talk, right? We're electromagnetic beings. So we have to understand what is being processed through us, the wave signals that are literally flowing in the air that your receiver is taking in. And if you don't have knowledge of yourself, you're not able to reject these ideas that don't come from you and say, no, I don't want that. That needs to go. I'm not receiving that. Yeah. My wavelength is not on white noise. Like, it's on a good radio station. That's what we need to do.
But you even being who you are has gotten muddled and it's gotten reduced to where you're from, what your race is, what your ethnicity is. And that's one of the things I really want us to talk about is the spiritual, and I know you and me both have this very strong understanding and connection with that spiritual self, that real essence of who we are. And I feel like a lot of that has gotten lost. And so you're right. How can you, what's the old scripture? How will they know if they aren't taught, And so if we are not taught who we really are in the essence of our true history as humans, as being made in the image and likeness of God himself, how can you reject when the enemy is throwing at you, surreptitiously, of course, but throwing at you these paradigms to tell you something different? You don't know what to accept. You can't separate the wheat from the tares. So you end up accepting living your life being one thing when you were created to be something totally different.
Exactly.
So
that's ignorance.
In the truest sense of the word.
Exactly.
Not in maliciousness, but in true, straight ignorance of not knowing. Not knowing. All right, Andy.
All righty.
This is always a pleasure talking to you, man. We'll be talking. Thanks to everybody who watched on the replay.